I feel very avid that, like, as someone who is going from a natural athlete to an enhanced athlete, you absolutely should understand whether or not you are using the compound at the appropriate time. Now, this starts with understanding what your goal is. This starts with understanding really energy balance as a whole. Are we looking to lose body fat or are we looking to build muscle? Now, when we look at anabolic androgenic steroids, a big part of what they're going to be really good at is building muscle. That is primarily the best use for them. Now, what you'll see is that this concept of use specifically for something like Anavar, it gets convoluted because women will often, or I guess individuals who are talking about Anavar's use for the female athlete, will really lean in, and I'm not going to assume they do it like maliciously or to misguide, but they will really lean into the discrepancy between its anabolic potential versus androgenic potential. Now, Anavar, compared to other steroids, does have a lower androgenic potential, meaning it's going to do less of the androgenic thing, which is the masculinizing side effects, which is the virilization, as opposed to its ability to build. Now, the internet freaks out when I say this, and this is not something I came up with. It's not like I did the research, but this is well known with literature. We can support that all anabolics do build muscle at the same rate. Now, obviously, if we're talking about, and this is where I know males are like freaking out, like their heads exploding right now. They're like, yo, no, Tren will build a lot better than Anavar. We're talking like milligram for milligram when we are considering that individual's potential to build. So you have to understand, like, women, we have testosterone too. And if you don't know that, like, that's a key component to understanding how to use PEDs, is that testosterone is going to allow you to build muscle better and faster. Now, this is the case for men and women. Now, if you take a man who is super physiological, he already has TRT in place, which, hey, spoiler, TRT in place is the framework, is the principles-based approach for how you should approach PED use. This is the way, whether you are female or male, for the same reasons as we tell male, like, don't be on Anavar or an oral only cycle. Like, there's no sense in doing that because you're really missing out on the benefits that you can derive by having that base of test. Now, the other aspect to consider is that all anabolics are going to have suppressive effects on your sex hormones, so specifically on testosterone. So if we think about, okay, well, testosterone is something that we can leverage in order to build muscle faster. You take an enhanced male who's already on TRT, and then you compare maybe trenbolone or anadrol or super, like, you can go like line by line and be like, well, this builds better than this. Okay, that isn't the way I would go about necessarily making, line by line comparisons to this built better for me, because in the state of a male who already is enhanced with TRT, that is not going to be equitable to, let's say, a female who doesn't have TRT in place, or even, let's say, has TRT in place and is supporting normal to normal high levels, not super physiological levels, and then adds a compound in. Now, you will find that certain anabolics, you might feel a better response, like there might be actual sensation that is improved compared to other ones. And this is where you should take a more individualized approach. But this framework, this concept of like, hey, let's make sure that as female athletes, we only use what we need to use. And primarily, we only use it in a time where it makes sense. This isn't one that you hear a lot of the higher level or varying divisions of female bodybuilders talk about. So even like within wellness, figure, physique, women's bodybuilding, they are going to be more risk averse. They are going to be less risk averse, which all that means is that if you're more risk averse, it means that you care about shit changing. It means that you're not necessarily willing to sacrifice your femininity in order to get progress a little bit faster. So this idea that like, okay, we're going to put this in when it's the most appropriate. This starts with understanding what the drug does, whether it builds or helps you lose, and what phase that you're in, and whether you need to build or lose. So just as a blanket, because some people, they get really confused when they hear me, go off on these topics, specifically with female PED use. This is for the individual who wants to preserve femininity. This is for the individual who does not want to incur any changes, so they're willing to do things relatively slower or at a pace that frankly is in line with them exposing themselves to less of a risk.